Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I've moved. I'm now at uni. Um, Apologies for the bad mic as always. I did have a new idea for intros, which was going to be me opening Pokemon, because I used to collect Pokemon back in the day. Unfortunately, I had to delete the original recording because the audio got corrupted. Um, but you can see here that this was a brilliant stars pack. I've tried to recreate the order. Well, the order is exactly the same, but the pack was already open, so I know what's in it. I don't care too much about like value of cards so much as just like their coolness. So um, that's basically what I gotta say. Oh, I just took an extra one. Hopefully you can see. Like it might be a little bit hard. Wait, if I just temporarily do this, there you go. That should be a bit better. This is a brilliant stars pack. I've got a few packs to do that are just a bit miscellaneous. They're sort of semi-related. Um, but as we're only doing one at a time, it's sort of motivation for me to upload because they're on me and I want to open them, and also motivation to not make shitty uploads because there's not many of them. They're expensive and I'm at uni. These two cards were the coolest. Torkoy, wait, Torkoal, um, as you can see, shiny. Um, who I think is really cool. I haven't heard of him. I haven't played Pokemon since Black and White on the DS. Haven't collected it since then as well. But yeah, pretty cool. And then Empoleon, who was a big card back in the day and is even cooler because his foil is only the image rather than the whole card. I think that always just looks cleaner. Um, I don't particularly know value of cards. I don't particularly care about value of cards, but if you happen to know and you happen to see me pack an expensive one at any point, feel free to let me know. Because that would be quite interesting to find out about. Anyway, let's get on with the meat and potatoes, as Most Critical would say, of this video. We'll go descending order, not from just the group stage, but also from the playoffs. So, for example, DFM will come before Loud, despite Loud coming before DFM in the groups. So Fnatic, I think they were pretty solid. It's unfortunate that Healy still has great potential, but it's really encouraging that Upset was able to adapt so quickly and just become a very good player instantly, despite missing a whole practice due to COVID. There's not too much to say about them. One thing I would remark on is that their back row was probably the weakest of any team that made it out of play-ins, so that's a little bit concerning. We'll talk about group stage after we've gone through all the teams, but like that's still a little bit concerning. But that's all I've got to really say about Fnatic. Let's then go on to Evil Gene. No, let's go on to DRX. DRX surprised me a little bit because they beat RNG, but then you have to remember that RNG's draft for that game was a bit odd and it was a bit really. It was like quite an RNG-ish draft, but it was just like didn't really make too much sense as a whole, and it didn't really play into their sort of gameplay. It was quite a weird draft, as I said. I think DRX are going to do all right against the non-Korean and Chinese teams, but I think they might struggle against the Korean and Chinese teams as a whole. I do think it's funny that there seems to be people who are big on certain American teams, which I'll talk about when we get onto the group stage as well. But yeah, DRX quite cool. I haven't got too many comments on them. I think they'll be fairly solid for a Korean team, but they'll be fourth seed Korean team for a reason. I don't think they're stronger than RNG. I think RNG are probably better as a team, but we'll have to go ahead and see. But yeah. Ooh, that's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. Let's go on to. I think we'll do RNG next because I think they're a bit more definitive as the second team. RNG were very solid. Well, I think they underperformed a little bit. I still think that they've got a bit more to give and a bit more to show. They showed a lot more in the LPL playoffs than they did in the play-ins, especially in the group stages. If I make myself a little bit smaller, you can now see the playoff games, the knockout games with RNG playing DFM. I think it's a bit disappointing that they dropped the early game against DFM for them. Obviously, that makes me very happy as a DFM fan, but honestly, that could have just been them underestimating DFM, expecting them to be a little bit easier than they actually were, because DFM did look quite weak as a whole, and we'll get onto that in a minute. Um, if I had like an overall criticism, it's that Breathe is currently there. Like, Breathe is beating their main carry, which is a bit different from what they did in LPL. So that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I mean, it's good in the sense that it shows that they're not one-dimensional, but it's bad in the sense that they succeeded going through Gala, Xiaohu, and Breathe, like more Gala based. So I don't know. We'll have to look out for that and see what happens, because they could continue that and it could be what's working for them in scrims, or it could just be that they're playing through Breathe, showing a certain style right now, so that certain teams get baited into thinking that that's their actual style when actually they want to keep playing through Gala. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye out on that. Evil Geniuses. Do I really have to talk about Western teams other than Fnatic? Okay, Evil Geniuses. They went 3-2 in groups, losing to DFM and Fnatic, but beating Loud, Beyond, and Chiefs. Honestly, I think that's kind of what I had expected coming into this stage. I don't know. Kauri wasn't as big of a detriment as some people were expecting. I think it's completely understandable that he wasn't, because he's actually a fairly solid player. I don't think they'll do anything in the next round, and I don't think their win against Mad Lions was particularly impressive. Like, yeah, it's really one-sided, but Mad just looked absolute dog shit after this opening game, and they didn't look great in the opening game anyway. So I don't really know what to tell you. Their macro decisions, their drafting decisions, the way they played around each other, the way they played team fights, the way they played lanes were just all awful. I mean, losing 24 minutes to a team that's basically equal to you, that you're expected to beat by the general public, sort of tells you everything you need to know. I don't think it was really Evil Geniuses stepping up in any way. I think it was much more Mad Lions just not being very good. So yeah, the fact that EG went to a tiebreaker and had to play tiebreakers against Loud and DFM sort of tells you that they're not going to go very far after this. Honestly, as a Western fan, I mean, I have bias because I'm European, but as a Western fan, I'd have rather have seen Mad Lions go through than EG, because I think Mad Lions could have taken a best of one against someone, as I don't really see EG taking a best of one against anyone who's remotely competitive. That's pretty much it. I think Vulcan and JoJo still look really solid, but like, the main difference between this game that DFM beat EGN and this game is that Evie ran it down, Steel ran it down, and JoJo had a Carly. Just don't let JoJo have a Carly, and EG just suck. Like, I can't remember drafts exactly, but they had a Carly, they won. Didn't need a Carly. Didn't need a Carly. Needed a Carly. Like, didn't need a Carly, but like at this point, Loud didn't play this well this game. Like, DFM didn't play that well this game, but they needed a Carly. Like, in the difficult games, they needed a Carly. They needed a Carly to beat Loud when Loud were popping off. If they had a Carly in this game, they'd have probably won. They needed a Carly to beat DFM in the end anyway. So yeah, I don't think EG are very strong. I don't think they've got a particularly diverse champion pool. I don't think their players, like, Inspired's pretty decent, but I don't think he's going to challenge like Kanavi, Tian, Canyon, that sort of guys. I don't think he's going to challenge that sort of echelon of players. Maybe Yankos, maybe Elyoya, Razorg. The reason I said Elyoya and Razorg because I always get them the wrong way around. So, like, it's who they're playing for. So maybe I'm just racist because they're both Spanish, right? Yeah, they're both Spanish. So yeah, maybe I'm just racist, even though I'm trying to learn Spanish. I want to be, well, I want to have some level of interaction with Spain in the future, or Spanish-speaking countries in the future, but maybe I'm just racist. Who knows? DFM. I think DFM surprised me in both a bad and a good way. I said DFM had third, fourth potential within groups, and that in play, if they got into the knockouts, they'd do fine. That's exactly what they did, but they didn't do it in the way I expected. I expected them to shit all over Beyond, Chiefs, Loud, and then get shat on by Fnatic and EG because like their mechanics are all that they have, and their macro just sucks. And so against teams with decent mechanics, their macro just lets them down. Part of the reason why I didn't expect them to do it in the way they did is because I didn't expect Loud to be as solid as they were. I will talk when I get onto Loud. I'll talk about how they looked in regional before we go into how they actually looked at Worlds. Why I underestimated them so much, and why it's not a thing about Brazil, which is what it's being built up to be. But we'll get onto that. I still think I'd have rather have seen Sengoku Gaming at Worlds with Honey as their AD carry rather than Vital, but I don't know. I think DFM can be happy with what they did. Taking a game off of RNG and beating Loud, um, with also with this 26-minute game, like these faster games at the end with Loud slowly mentally booming. I think you can be pretty happy with that because Loud were a very, very solid team that no one really expected and probably weren't drafted against enough, weren't practiced against enough. People didn't like simulate drafts against them because they expected them to be a typical Brazilian team that finished fifth, sixth. So I think um, DFM can be very happy with themselves. They clearly showed though they don't really have the mental fortitude to take on big games like tiebreakers. They lost straight away and they looked awful. Um, in the knockout, they still didn't look quite up to standard, but they look good enough to do things. I think both teams in this game underperformed a little bit relative to how they had been. But clearly they didn't embarrass themselves against RNG. They played pretty decently, so DFM can be happy. Mad Lions. Do we need to talk about Mad Lions? I like Mad Lions. Like Kaiser and Armit are amongst my favorite players in the LEC. Not particularly from a mechanical standpoint or like an ability standpoint. The Kaiser is. Um, but oh my god. Mad Lions, I don't know what people saw in them. I don't know why they had an 86% backing in Pick'ems in this series. Like they haven't won. This is the only best of five they've won in the summer split or summer split plus post summer split. Like they were awful. Um, I guess you can say if you can want to say one thing, they didn't look horrific against DRX and RNG, and then they won it every other series. But like I don't think that's really that positive as a whole. I think if we're being completely honest with ourselves, Mad Lions were not that solid, and they sort of performed like Mad Lions do at every Worlds tournament, where they do slightly worse than you expect them to. Sorry, every international tournament, they do slightly worse than you expect them to. To be fair, they did it kind of exactly what I expected, but like at a worse level. Like they didn't look as good. Like if I had to say, like I watched a lot more playing Group A than playing Group B. Because playing Group B, you had RNG underperforming, and then you had shit. And then Group A, you had Fnatic kind of underperforming, EG kind of underperforming relative to like full strength squads, etc. And then you had Loud and DFM kind of overperforming, beyond performing as you'd expect, and then Chiefs performing as you'd expect, and that made quite a close first to fifth. Um, well, I mean, Beyond Gaming weren't really in it, but it was a relatively close first to fifth. Who did Beyond even beat? I can't even remember who Beyond beat other than Chiefs. It was Loud. I mean, that's all tells us everything. Like first to fifth were pretty decent, but first to fourth especially were like very, very solid. I really enjoyed watching them play. Um, oh, sorry, it was Mad Lions, wasn't it? This game is irrelevant because the fourth to sixth in this group were awful, and this just sort of is just Mad Lions returning to what they always do in best of fives this year. Well, this split. Um, so yeah, that's a bit it for Mad Lions. I'm not happy nor disappointed for them really. It's just sort of what you'd expect. Saigon Buffalo. I think Saigon Buffalo let themselves down a little. I didn't have great expectations for them coming into it because VCS, I'd seen VCS Winter where VCS looked awful. VCS Spring, they didn't look great. I can't remember what happened at MSI for them, but it wasn't anything special, right? Did they even play? Wait, MSI. I can't even remember whether VCS made it here. They did. They came sixth. Yeah, so it was exactly what you'd expect. So yeah, it that's sort of. what I saw, like this is exactly what I expected. They didn't overperform. They didn't even look like they had the chance to overperform. They just sort of did. And like it's not an issue, but it's just like there's nothing really to talk about. Like I can't go, Shogun looked better than I expected him. No, Shogun looked like a solid VCS AD carry. BJ looked better than I expected him to. No, he looked solid for a VCS player. Like, that's pretty much all you can say about Saigon Buffalo. I mean, them taking a game off Mad Lions is pretty decent, but then Mad Lions suck at BO5s and they got clapped in the game immediately after, although they did kind of clap in this game. So, you know, yeah, Saigon Buffalo, they can be kind of happy, but they should also be disappointed. There should be an element of disappointment there. Loud. Oh, loud, 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 loud. I massively underestimated them, but I think I'm right to underestimate them. Like, I'll put my hands up. I thought they were coming fifth in this group. I thought they'd come out with one win, which would be against Chiefs, who come from a no-team region, who dominated that no-team region, because Loud just like let's go to their split. Let's freaking go to their split. All right. They finished fourth in regular season and didn't look like they deserved to finish higher than fourth. Like, yeah, okay, this was tight between second and fifth, as I commented in my preview video, but like, they didn't look like they deserved more than fifth. They didn't look like they would deserve more than fourth even. Them slapping Red Cannons was a bit of an upset. I think Red Cannons were probably the better team in that game. And then they lost to Pain, which was a clash of the upsets because Pain had also upset Furia and they lost and they deservedly lost, but it was a close series and it was an enjoyable series. And I do recommend if you want to learn what CB LOL look like, this is the series to watch. You can see how much better Loud look like now than they did in CB LOL because in CB LOL the mechanics, the macro as a whole was just weaker. And I think it's really cool that they've turned up and massively improved. And part of that might be that this is quite a local worlds for them because they're not going to get a worlds in Brazil. It's not like Rainbow Six, which is the game I came from originally, where in terms of esports, not playing, I played League first, but I came from R6 esports first, where they're like Brazil is top three regions, arguably the best right now, well, top four because there's only four, but like you in Siege, it's like APAC are like barely the worst, and then you've got like probably if I had to guess right now, EU, NA barely above, and then like Brazil barely above right now. So you get events hosted in all of the regions because they're quite competitive as different regions. Whereas like in League, you've got four defined major regions: Korea, China, Europe, and NA. And then you've got the wildcard regions. And so you're not going to get too many events hosted in the wildcard regions. You might get the odd one, but I think that's really cool. And then they turned up here in these games, but it also looked like the other teams were playing worse. Like if you look at this, they won 2 games sub 30. It's Furia who were the strongest team in the region. And they didn't do anything particularly special apart from this Vel'Koz, who I did kind of expect to see at Worlds, but we didn't, unfortunately. Um, and then against Pain, it sort of felt like Pain had gone back to the level they should be at. Loud had just sort of slightly improved, and had like barely become the strongest team in the region, but not really, but only because Furia like didn't look very good and because Red Cannons had gone out to Furia and whatever. Like it was just felt fortunate timing. Um, so yeah, I think that's like the build up. They look really good, like especially their bot lane. I was really like the bot cap meme. It fitted because they actually were playing really solidly as a bot lane, and they were actually gapping, e.g. DFM, Fnatic, Beyond, and Chiefs. Like they did at times look like the best bot lane in that group. And the fact that they got to tiebreakers, they finished third, really, really solid, massively overachieving for what I was expecting. I think they can be disappointed though, because they improved so much, looked so good to the point where LS genuinely thought they were one of the best teams out of Group A. I think he predicted them to beat EG in the tiebreakers, and I think he expected them to be DFM in the play-ins. Um, but yeah, I think they can be slightly disappointed that they lost this series, but I think they should be impressed, happy, and look to move forwards with the development that they've shown because they did. They massively improved, and that's something they should definitely be happy with. So we've done fourth places. Let's get on to the teams that didn't make playoffs. We didn't make play in round two. Beyond Gaming. I don't know what to say. PCS has fallen off hard. Like, if we go, let's go via Beyond to get to what happened in this summer. And we go here. You go PSG Talon, strongest team. Deep Cross J Team, very solid teams. Frankie Sports, and like it was close. It was close. Top six were all close, but there it was like look at some of the names. Okay, look at some of the names. Hanabi, Unified, Kaiwing, Gori, very solid. Um, J Team's got a few people like Uniboy, Kongyue, who have been around, Driver, who's been around the region. This team is also CBTC Flying Oyster or CBT Flying Oyster is they've also been around a lot. Like Rest, Gemini, and Koala in particular. I always think of people who've missed out a bit in J Team. Oh, sorry, I've just realised I'm covering everything. Who I've always thought about they've missed out versus PSG Talon. Just by simply being unlucky. Hollow, Pretender, Eminem, they've been around a bit. Um, but like the best teams clearly fell off. Like PSG Talon and J Team were, in my opinion, the best teams coming out of the group stage. And PSG Talon lost one and then won two. Well, they lost 2-1-2 in playoffs. So 50-50 record, not great for a team that's the strongest in the region. J Team just lost 2-1-1, the second strongest team in your region. So you ended up with the not strong teams from the region, like out of Beyond Gaming's players, I don't think Mikai, Husha, Minji, Waco, or Kino were particularly strong in their spot. Liang was pretty decent. You'd expect that from him though, as a substitute. But yeah, he was a very solid sub. But they didn't look overly strong. CVCC, I think we can be happy with, and I think we can expect stuff from groups. But yeah, and so they sort of underperformed, but because other regions stepped up, like it's not because they they do suck. They do suck by PCS standards, but not because like they are just clinically bad. Also, my screen appears to have frozen. I don't know what that is. Actually, you can see my mouse, but you can't see my face. But whatever. So hopefully it's okay, but I can't do anything to fix that. This is uni Wi-Fi type beats. Yeah, hopefully that's all good. Maybe I'll get rid of the camera for now. Um, but yeah, I think the PCS can be kind of disappointed, but also not insanely disappointed. Like I don't think it was the worst thing I've ever seen come out of PCS by any sense the imagination. Um, yeah. Then we'll go on to talk about Isthurus. I think Isthurus overperformed. There we go, I fixed it. I think Isthurus overperformed. No meme. No meme. Well, it's a slight meme. It's a slight meme. Because Isthurus, I commented that they were the weakest. They weren't the strongest team coming out of the LLA, which I think is the weakest region. I thought Estro with Boogie and Mirio were the strongest team. I thought Boogie, Mirio, and Shadow were the three of the strongest players in the region. And I thought Isidorus with ADD, Jelly, and pretty much nothing else were not that solid. You can see here they didn't finish top of their group. They lost 3-1 the first time, and they just seemed to learn how Astral played well enough to beat Astral in the second series. Which, as you can see here, which I think is fine as a thing, but I think that was detrimental to their chances at Worlds. So the fact that they beat Istanbul Wildcats, I will get on to Istanbul Wildcats and talk about why it's not too much of an upset. In fact, I might as well do them together because Istanbul Wildcats are also in that group, and I've got to cover them next if I continue my order. Um, like Istanbul Wildcats, they were exactly like the washed up old Turkish players that we were expecting of them. Like They've kept this same roster has done all of these successes. Like they've come second in TCL, third, fourth, won TCL. They've come 10th, 11th at MSI. They've won TCL, come 11th at MSI. They've won, and then they've come 23rd, 24th. Like it's nothing new, exactly. So yeah, they were the washed up players you were expecting. Not too much to say. Chiefs again, they were washed up. They're Chiefs. Like they're not washed up, but like they're OCE. Like what are you expecting at OCE? Like, wait, if actually let's go into the OCE League and just show you something. OCE, 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 OCE. Like, Order finished third, right? Who was Order's support? Order support was Corporal. Wait. Ooh, do, 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 do. Order support is my man Corporal. Oh my god, stop it. Stop it, OBS. Order support, Corporal. Where did Corporal come from? Corporal came from the LJL, where he didn't look remotely special. He then won Spring Split with Order. I mean, he's not a bad support, but he didn't look anything special in LJL. He looked like your standard LJL support. He won LCM, went to MSI to represent OCE, and he was also third in your region. Like, we can safely say that they're as a region they're not very strong, and NA poaching their best talents is not going to help them. Ooh. And so yeah, that's all I've really got to say about Chiefs. So I guess we'll talk about groups now. And my predictions for groups. Give me a second. The Wi-Fi is being a tad slow. Um, Unfortunately, I can't really edit this out, and I have to do this while streaming. I can't like not stream, um, just because of time. And I can't really edit my streams because of time as well whilst at uni, and also the fact that I've got a job and stuff. Um, so yeah, that'll be a bit annoying, but I'm sure you guys can deal with it if you can put up with my bad mic. So we'll talk Group A. Group A, I'm not going to go too deep. I'm going to do a separate video, like going really deep, but we'll just talk about the playing teams. Fnatic, I expect to challenge for third at best. That's all I really see. Group B, EG, probably fourth. Group C, DRX, challenging for second, definitely. Maybe even just taking second outright. Group D, RNG, challenging for second. That's the video. If you want to tell me where I'm wrong, correct me, agree with me, debate with people who agree or disagree with me, feel free to comment down below. Remember, keep it nice and chill on behalf of these two. Um, so yeah, thank you very much. I see you in the next one.